So often in occult spaces and magical spaces, we hear about when the magic has worked, but it's not very often people talk about when it hasn't. And I'm as guilty of this. I've talked about magic that has worked here on this channel, but not so much about the failures. But I wanted to talk today about some potential reasons why your magic isn't working. These are just thoughts that have occurred to me and reflections I've made about my own experience. I'm not saying that these are the only reasons why magic doesn't work. So if you've got any other suggestions and thoughts on this, please let me know down in the comments. So the first reason why your magic might not be working is that you're not taking any action in the mundane. It's really important to remember that magic is not a guarantee that we will manifest what we desire. Just because we work a piece of magic for something we want, there's no guarantee that that will happen. In order to help increase those chances, we can do things in the mundane. I think one of the most common examples is if you work some magic to get a new job, but you're not actually out there applying for jobs or going for interviews, you're really reducing the chances that you're going to actually get a job. So don't neglect doing things in the mundane. Think to yourself, okay, what could I be doing after I've worked this piece of magic? What is it that I can be doing in the mundane to further increase the chances of my desire manifesting? The next reason your magic might not be working is that you have an unclear desire when you're working your magic. I've noticed this particularly more in sigil magic, and it's really weird because normally I only realise after I've actually worked the sigil how unclear my desire has been, and therefore my magic may not come to manifest. I think I used to believe that a vague desire gave the magic more chance of working because you're allowing more possibilities to manifest. I suppose you're giving the magic more options to choose from. But since then, I've learned that actually being really specific is helpful. It's likening magic like an arrow where you pull back the bow and release the arrow and it knows which target to hit. I don't know who used that analogy, but it's really putting a clear desire into your magic so that the magic knows what to do, and again, therefore you increase your chances of that thing manifesting. The third reason your magic might not be working is that you're trying to change something that is outside of your control. I think it's important for us to remember that there are so many things that we are not in control of. There are so many things going on in the world that we have no control over. Maybe we can have some influence over those things, whether it's through magic or whether it's through mundane actions that we can take. But if we are trying to work magic for something that we cannot possibly have any control over, it may be that we need to refocus our energy on something else. It's a bit like just reflecting on the conflicts that are going on in the world and how so out of my control that is. But maybe there are things which I can do, which may feel lesser, quote unquote, but that may have some impact on the situation. Like maybe I can donate to charitable causes or organisations that are involved in helping with regard to those conflicts. If you think the thing that you're working the magic on is perhaps a bit too big, if you like, or if it is outside your control, maybe take a few steps back from it. Sometimes it's breaking something down into chunks or steps and taking a few steps back and asking yourself, okay, I can't possibly effect change on that thing, but what is something else that I can do with this magic, that I can do in the mundane, that might be able to at least influence or increase the chances of something changing. The next mistake that I've made quite recently is working multiple rituals towards the same goal. I have a couple of long-term goals, and I have done some sigil magic and some more, if you like, elaborate rituals towards those goals. But the problem is now, I don't know if I've overdone it. I don't know if there is such a thing as overdoing it, where you do too much magic. I don't know if that would mean that you're not trusting the magic that you've already done, or you're kind of over-egging the pudding, to use that phrase. And also, if the magic does manifest, if it does work, which piece of magic has achieved that? You won't know. That's a lesson learned from me, to focus one piece of magic on one goal and try not to be tempted to then add more rituals towards that same goal. I suppose it might also come across as not trusting the original piece of magic. I don't know whether that trust would then affect the chances of that magic happening. But anyway, lesson for me is work one piece of magic for one specific goal and then let go of the luster result and see what happens. This next reason, I'm not sure what I think about it. It's something someone said in one of my comments, and it is that spirits don't want to work with you. Now, I've never experienced any kind of strong sense of a spirit saying, no, I don't want to work with you. If a piece of magic hasn't worked, for me, it's just because it hasn't manifested. I've never had any messages that would suggest to me that an entity doesn't want to work with me. But if you have, let me know. I'm not saying that this isn't true. I suppose my only reservation with considering that a spirit or entity doesn't want to work with me is that it may lead to us not reflecting on mistakes we might have made in the magic. And we're not reflecting on where we might have gone wrong, what we could do differently in the future. It's almost like placing the responsibility of magic not working on something else. And I think that potentially can be a problem because it means that we don't get to learn and refine our magic as we go along. But like I say, if you've had an experience where a spirit or entity has been very clear that they don't want to work with you, let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested in that. The next one is less about maybe not the magic working, but it's about how you perceive it. So the magic has worked, but not the way you think. It may be that the magic has indeed manifested, but not in the way maybe that you assumed it would. So I've had magic manifest, but not in ways that I expected, and it might have taken me a little while to recognise, oh yeah, that's the result of that piece of magic I worked. I guess I usually have an idea or an assumption in my head about how the magic will work. Then it's worked, but not in the way I expected. I guess that can help to keep us on our toes to look out for those signs that our magic has worked. So that leads me on to the next point, which is you've missed the signs. So the magic has worked, but you've actually missed the signs that it has worked. Maybe because, like I was saying, it's manifested in a way you didn't expect, or maybe it's been very subtle. I think when I first started doing magical workings, because of often how it's put across on social media, I perhaps expected that if you were to get a sign from magic, it would be very obvious, like an epiphany kind of thing, that you wouldn't miss it. But often when I've done magic, and also when I've done rituals and maybe got a sense that something's going on in the ritual, it's usually, for me anyway, it's been very subtle. I guess it's worth remembering that magic maybe can be easy to miss because it may not be as obvious as we would like it to be or that we think it will be, but subtle doesn't mean that it's any less powerful. Another reason your magic may not be working or that you think it's not working is that our timeline and the timeline of the other realms that we're working with are not necessarily the same thing. So my longer term goals, I guess, like I've mentioned before, I've put an assumption in my head that maybe these goals will be realised or this magic will work over the coming months and maybe over the next year or so. That's my timeline based on my understanding of linear time and the realm or realms in which the entities we work, in which they exist. Their quote unquote time may not be the same as ours. So the magic that we want to manifest may come about sooner than we think, or it may take longer. So alongside the fact that you've got this timeline that may or may not fit with what you'd like, you've also got to bear in mind that the signs may be very subtle. So I think at times it can be quite hard to kind of let go of if the magic has or hasn't worked, because sometimes I feel like I'm always on the lookout for it. If it's not working to my timeline, if it's going to be very subtle, if I might miss the signs, do I need to keep an eye out for it all the time? But I don't think we should despair if we feel that our magic hasn't worked. That's part of it. I don't believe that every single piece of magic that we perform is going to work, but I do think that it's useful to go back into your magical diary, look at those pieces of work that you don't feel have come to pass, they've not manifested, and think about maybe what you could do differently next time. It's a bit like an experiment, isn't it? Thinking about the conditions and the materials that you used for the magic and seeing whether those need to be tweaked. That's part of the fun of it. I would certainly try not to take it personally if your magic doesn't work. Just try it again. Or it might be that a certain goal or manifestation isn't right at this time, or it's not going to happen at this time for whatever reason. I think there are so many things that we can't understand about what goes on in these other realms and why or why not things don't manifest. And I think we can waste a lot of time trying to figure that out rather than actually just figuring out other ways that we might be able to manifest what we want. So I hope these reasons have been helpful. Like I say, let me know in the comments of any others that you want to add that you have found useful in your reflections about why your magic may not have worked. Take good care, be well, and I will speak to you again soon.